And we're live! Welcome to RockSim Live. I am Tim Van Milligan. I'm your host today. This is where we talk about the RockSim software. We talk about RockSim, RockSim Pro, and the Launch Visualizer. If you're into those things, those are all products from Apogee, and so we'll be happy to talk about them today. This is your opportunity to send in your questions on how to use RockSim. That's what I'm here for, is to answer those. Today is March 22, 2024. It's a Friday afternoon, and it's kind of 50-ish degrees outside today here. But I've got my chat going on over here, so if you have a question about RockSim, go ahead and put it in the chat, and then we'll go ahead and try to answer that. So we have a bunch of people here. We have Carlos from Marietta, Georgia, and he sent in a question already. We have Chris's Rocketry and More from Golden Valley, Arizona. We have Troy Ermet from Riverton, Utah, and Alfred Indy. And he says, good looking ad in the NAR magazine. Well, thank you. And Two Explorers here. And he says, he's kind of hidden by my little heart symbol here. Also known as David He Again. I'm not sure what that one is, but welcome to Explore. If you are brand new to RockSim, let me open up my browser here and show you where to get RockSim. As soon as it pops up. There it is. I'll have to go to the Apogee webpage. Okay, so let me share my screen. There's the screen. Okay, so you can get RockSim at apogeerockets.com. And this scrolling banner bar here, as you go through it, you'll see the RockSim 10 logo. You click on that, and then it will take you to where you can download a free trial version. If you're ready to buy, right here it says order it here. I did have one question that came in from somebody that was using RockSim on Windows, and then he got a new Macintosh and he wanted to load RockSim on it. So how do you do that? Well, you go here to that free trial, you download the free trial, and then you'll install it, and it's going to be in demo mode for 30 days. So to activate it into the full version, you need to use your unlock key. And where do you get your unlock key? Well, we've got them on our website. So what you're going to do is you're going to log into your account on the website. So you click up here at the very top where it says create account or log in. Once you're logged in, it'll say your name. It'll say like, welcome, Tim Van Milligan. And then once it says that, then come here to my account. And when you click on my account, there'll be a whole bunch of other items here. And one of them is like order history, but the important one is RockSim keys. That's where we store them. So it's already preloaded into your account when you purchase RockSim. So that's where you're going to find them. What else can I tell you? So if you want more information about RockSim, go to the How-To and Guides menu up here. Come down here to Software. And then on this page, you have a lot of choices. You can download that free trial again. You can purchase RockSim. You can click on this one was what is RockSim. You can see the features, the frequently asked questions, the system requirement, version history, all that good stuff. And then on this side is more of the tutorial side. So we have video tutorials. We have our RockSim live training, which is what we're doing right now. So this is our episodes, and we're a little bit behind in getting the timestamps up, but we'll catch up. I don't know how many people use this page, but we appreciate you using it. So if you're interested in a specific topic, like I always use the example of decals. So on your keyboard, do a Control F for find. On the Macintosh, it's Command F. And it's going to bring up this little search bar here. And it's just going to search this page. And if we wanted to search for decals, see, then it pops up, say, hey, how to add decals to your RockSim design. So there you go. So any topic that you might think of, and if you're brand new and you can't wait until the next RockSim Live to find the answer, that's what you do. You just go here to our archive page and do a search. If you can't find the answer, what you do is you go to the contact form right here, click on that, and then you come up here and you'll choose RockSim General Questions and Support, including keys. Click on that, and then type in your name and your email, and then type in your question. If you want to submit an image attaching it, you just click on that. And we'll get that, and then we can answer it in the next RockSim Live. So there you go. Rosa is here from Ottawa. To Explore says, question. When using a chute release, what is a good velocity to open the chute? Most of my simulation using it saying my flight is unsafe because velocity at deployment is too great. Okay, so what is he talking about if you're new to RockSim? So let's open up an existing design, and I'll just choose one here. And basically this is a question about for all parachutes. So I don't have it here. So let's go to recommend motors. I'll answer, I want to get that information. So I'm going to do a recommend motors. These are previous motors that were loaded, and velocity at deployment. Didn't tell me what the velocity at deployment was. Okay, so let's run a new simulation, and we'll go to choose an engine. So this screen right here is the RockSim simulation properties screen, and you click on choose an engine. And this is what we're going to do, is going to load an engine into the rocket motor. So we first need to find the engine we want to load. So let's say it's an Estes C6, and we're going to choose the delay of 7 seconds. And we'll say OK, and this shows the rear of the rocket, and you can see that the brown inside indicates that an engine has now been loaded. If we kind of slide this off the screen and look down here at the rocket, we can see that the engine is now loaded. And it's a C6-7. Under the flight events, we do have a parachute in there, and so right now we're going to have the parachute deploy a maximum ejection delay. And then with the starting state, I'm launching the rocket at an angle of 9.87 degrees. And this little slider right here, this wheel, allows me to change the launch angle. So imagine the wind is blowing across the screen, and it's blowing from the left side to the right. And so this is going to say, okay, if I move the slider that way, I'm going to be launching with the wind. And if I spin it this way, I'm launching into the wind. So I'm going to say, let's launch it into the wind about 12 degrees. And let's do a flight profile. Just do a quick look of what this is going to look like when we launch it. And this is the flight profile screen. And here's our rocket right down here at the 0 point. So these numbers down here indicate how far away from the launch pad the rocket is at any given point. So if it was over here, it would be 300 feet downwind. Remember, our wind is coming from the left, blowing across to the right. And we have the rocket angled into the wind. And then when we launch it, the rocket takes off, it goes up. See the smoke drifting out of the rocket, and it's drifting with the wind. It's sliding this way. So the rocket's going over the top, and at 7 seconds after burnout, the parachute popped out. And so you can kind of see what's going on there. And then the rocket lands, and the actual distance is 289 feet upwind. Okay, so that's our simulation, and now we want to see is this safe launch? And so basically one of the criteria for the safe launch is, does the parachute open at a speed that's slow enough that's not going to shred the parachute? Because if you open the parachute up too fast, it's going to rip the canopy right off. Imagine, as an example, is like you're in your car and you have an Estes rocket or something, and you take the nose off and you hang it outside the window of the car, and you just throw out your arm out the window, and the parachute feels the wind. And so at what speed does your parachute just rip apart? And from our experience, we use the number of around 50 miles an hour. And if your rocket's going greater than 50 miles an hour, then you might consider slowing the rocket down when the parachute opens. So, so here, this column here is velocity at deployment. And for this rocket, we're above that 50 mile an hour threshold. We're at 55 miles an hour. So we're not too far above it, but it's still, that's pretty fast. So at that point, it might give you the error message that it's going too fast. So he's seeing the error message over here. So to see that, let's run multiples of simulations. Let's do that. This is how you test various motors really fast. So again, you go to prepare for launch, and then you come down here to recommend motors, and we're going to choose all manufacturers. Let's just choose Estes so that it goes a little quicker. And the engine type, we'll just say all Estes motors that are 18 millimeters in diameter. And I want to use my conditions, my launch conditions. Remember, I had wind blowing from the left side towards the right. All right, so now it's telling me that under every condition, and for this rocket, it's not recommended. And it's not showing me any velocity at deployment. Let me see what else is. There's some columns that are missing here. So let's organize the columns. So what I did to bring up this little menu is that you just right-click in the top row and say organize columns, and this is what we can show. I want to do safe deployment, 90 degrees safety, liftoff speed, and weather cocking. And let's turn off static margin, altitude at deployment. We'll leave those and click OK. And so now we have, for this rocket, it says that the weather cocking is unsafe, the liftoff speed is safe. We're still getting NA for safe deployment, and the reason is RockSim terminated the simulations right at Apogee. And that's what this symbol means right here, is that the rocket took off and the simulation stopped at Apogee. So why did the simulation stop at Apogee and rather than coming all the way down? Because RockSim runs those simulations multiple times. And the first time that it finds an unsafe condition, it just takes that motor and just, pushes it off to the side and say, we're not going to use that one when I have to rerun it again and again. And so it found, like on this one, the liftoff speed was unsafe. That was the half A6 motor. And so the next time it was not going to run that motor. And then on all these other ones, it found that the rocket was going too far sideways. It was weather cocking too much. And so then it rejected those. And so it never got to figure out what was the best deployment time. So in order to find out, we need to modify our simulations. So I'm going to go back to prepare for launch. And this time, I'm going to go under simulation control, or starting state, I'm sorry. And instead of angling it at minus 12 degrees, let's go into the wind, or with the wind, about 4 degrees. And let's just run a simulation this time. And you must select one or more engines. Okay, so when I ran all these simulations, it doesn't know which engine to use. So let's again select the C6. There it is, and I think I used a 7-second delay. Click OK, and now when we say flight profile, we should get a profile here. Okay, so here's the rocket this time, and instead of it being angled into the wind, we're angling it just like 4 degrees, so it's not much. 4 degrees with the wind, so it's angled off to this direction. And when we launch it, the rocket's taking off. And this time, it's not really going upwind or downwind. It's not weathercocking, so that's like a really good flight. And if you're curious about, is the rocket weathercocking too much, click on the Preferences button down here, and let's turn on the Display Weathercocking. And what this is going to do is it's going to make a cone coming up from the launch pad that's 30 degrees. And so here's the cone. And if the rocket's apogee point, the apogee point is the highest point in the flight. If that apogee point is inside of this cone, that's the criteria for good weathercocking, not excessive weathercocking. So if I launch it, you will see that the rocket takes off. Here's the smoke. Now it's coasting, and there's apogee. That's the highest point in the flight, and so that was a good flight. So if I go back here, now because we didn't angle the rocket, now our our speed at deployment has come down to 37 miles an hour. And let's run that simulation again with all the motors like we did before. So go to Prepare for Launch, do Recommend Motors, use my values, and launch. Oh, I forgot to select just the Estes. So it went through 34. At this point, it found like 6 of them it didn't like. So now it's running the rest of the 28, and it's going to give us recommendations here. So this time, under the Safe Deployment column, I don't think we're going to see any that are well, we're going to see some NAs because it didn't like those. But it didn't like those because the liftoff speed was too slow. Yeah, so now it's showing me all the recommended motors in this column, so I can use the D10, and then the optimal delay, there's a column for that, so if a D10-6 would be a good one. The C6, it's telling me a C6-5 would be a better choice than what the C6-7 that I used. So if I select this one, and then hit prepare for, not that, hit the wrong thing. I'm going to do load engines. So it's loading that C6. And, well, we already ran that simulation. The C6-5, and then launch. I'm going to do that flight profile again. Okay. Yeah, this is going to be very much like the last one. It's going to go pretty much straight up. But instead of flipping over and landing down here, look, the rocket actually, it was still going up when the parachute opened up. If you want to see that, you can take the slider bar and just kind of slide it backwards. And see, at this point, the rocket popped its parachute. It was just about to apogee, so that was like really good. And then under there is the parachute, and it's coming down. All right, so then if I go back here to the simulation summary, I don't have, oh, here it is, velocity at deployment. Now it's down to 5 miles an hour. Before our last time, well, the last time we ran this was the C6-7, it was at 55. Here's the last one, 37.05, and now we're down to 5 miles an hour. Just by changing the launch angle and the delay, we can control when the parachute comes out. So to answer your question, When using the chute release, what is a good velocity to open the chute? And the velocity is, you want to keep it under 55 or 50 miles an hour. A chute release is a dual deployment type of thing. It gets a little bit more complicated because now you have to have two parachutes inside. So if I want to do that real quick, I go to the Design Components tab, and we have one parachute right here, and let's add another one. So I'm going to put the second parachute in the same body tube, add another one. Let's make this one, let's make it small, an 8-inch plastic. So it's kind of a small parachute. Let's call it 8-inch plastic, because I'm not sure what the other one was. Click OK, come on. Okay, so there's our new parachute. Here's the old one. And this one was 12 inches. Let's make this one bigger. Let's make it 15 inches. And this one has a mass override on it. Let's turn that off. And now it says that the mass is 10 grams. And let's click OK. And it says it's 6 grams. 6 grams for the 15-inch and 19 grams for the 8-inch. What's going on there? Oh, the thickness is like huge. Let's make it 2 mil. Still didn't change yet. What goes on? It's not mass override is not turned on. Low density polyethylene, shroud length. Oh, now it changed it. Okay. It's still pretty low, 0.5 gram. Okay, so here's our small parachute, and here's the 15-inch chute right there. So when dual deployment, we're going to have same C65 motor. This time there's 2 parachutes. This first one is the big one, and this is the small one. So the small one we don't eject at maximum ejection delay, and then the other one, there's no speed here, so we got to pick an altitude. And let's pick an altitude of 200 feet. Is 200 feet going to be good? I don't know. Let's find out. So we'll launch it and see what happens. Okay, so there's the rocket on the pad, and it's taking off. It's up at Apogee. There's the first parachute. Okay, so we're at 700 feet right now and coming down. And at 200 feet, the other parachute's going to come out. This image is not going to change, but you'll see this line of dots. It's going to start going this way. And there it went. So that tells us that the big parachute came out, and it's landing nominally. And let's click cancel. Okay, so again, our first parachute deployed at 5.97 miles per hour. So how do we find that velocity for the chute release? So this time, let's first double click on it and see if there's any information in the detailed flight report. So this is, if you double click on any row, there's more data that is shown than in the columns. And you can come down here to recovery system data. Okay, so there's 2. Okay, so here's parachute, and that was the name of the big one. It was just called parachute. And this other one was 8-inch plastic parachute. So this tells me you got to name your components better and more descriptive than just calling them parachute, because otherwise you're going to get confused. So our first parachute deployed at 5.97 miles per hour at an altitude of 829 feet. Our big parachute deployed at a velocity of 31 miles per hour at an altitude of right at 200 feet. We'll round that up to 200 feet, which is what we set it at. So in shoot release, you want this velocity at deployment, and you still want to keep it under 50 miles an hour. So if you're getting that number bigger than 50 miles an hour, you might want to consider changing your deployment altitude, or using a bigger chute for the drogue chute. Although if you use a bigger chute on the drogue chute, you're going to it's going to drift a lot further. So let's look at that chart for this. Here's we're going to plot out time along the x-axis and velocity and altitude on the y-axis. So one will be blue, one will be red. And let's change this to the end of data. So when there's no more data, when the rocket hits the ground, that's when we want to stop timing. And then plot that graph, and this is what we see. So this red line is altitude. So the rocket hit its peak altitude around 7 seconds and then started drifting down on the small parachute. And then when it got to 200 feet, then the big parachute popped out and it came down at a different rate. So our small parachute came out here at this this blue line that says eject. It came out and it had to slow the rocket down gradually as it was coming down. So it was falling fast. It opened, but it's still like had to slow down, and then it hit a constant speed, and that constant speed was about 37 miles an hour. So if you want a lower constant speed here, then you have to use a bigger parachute. Or eject this other one while it was still slowing down, which you probably wouldn't want to do. It's just too confusing. So if I ejected that parachute at 8 seconds into the flight, this second parachute, and this is where we can see it. We can see it because the altitude is coming down slower, and then it hit a static velocity right here around 22 seconds. So that's kind of how you read these charts at the same time. Very good question. Terry Wheelock says, design a dang rocket. Okay. I had a question from Carlos. We got to ask Carlos a question, but his is a design question. Where did that go? That was here. Okay, Carlos says, I am a big fan of payload rockets and upscaling a classic Estes X-ray with a nose cone. I even have old decals upscaled. Then I saw your excellent materials about used in rocketry and saving weight. Can you share any hints on hollowing out balsa parts? Okay, so a balsa part is a solid part because it's carved from a piece of wood. And so you'll have a nose cone. Let's start a nose cone here. So let's start a new design. And we'll say no, save changes on that one. So to start a new design, and we want to start with a nose cone. When we design a rocket, we start here on the left and we work our way across these columns. So let's call this, I'm going to call it the hound dog, because I have another question about a hound dog rocket. And that's really all I need to do on that screen, is to give it a name, the rocket design components. So now we're going to start designing. So we're going to start with a nose cone, and let's make it, oops, I hid the thing underneath. I want to say like a BT55. So something, BT55 is a 33 millimeter nose cone. So let's click OK on that. So now here's our nose cone. And right now it says it's hollow. Let's make it solid, and let's make it balsa wood. Okay, so this is our balsa nose cone, and it starts out solid like this. And so Carlos's question is, what happens when you hollow this out? And in RockSim, there's two ways to do it. One way, and if you were to drill, to do it yourself, you'd probably do it this way. You'd start with a drill, and you drill a hole in the back of the rocket. And when you do that, what you're doing is this core length and core diameter. So say this is a BT55, and it has a diameter of 1.326 inches, and we're going to take a 1/2-inch drill, because that's the biggest I can fit in my drill chuck, and we put a 1/2-inch hole in it. So I want you to notice the mass of the component here. So we're gonna drill a hole that's a 1/2-inch diameter, and then how deep is it gonna be? And I can go pretty deep on this one. I can probably go maybe like up to 1 inch. And when we do that, you can see there's a hole in it now. Look at that. And that hole is 1 inch deep, and the mass went down because we removed material. So if you were able to do a bigger hole, let's say 0.75, you can see now it's bigger. And at some point, the drill is going to start coming out the sides of the rocket. So we have a length on this nose cone of 5.3 inches, and we're only going 1 inch deep. And I can tell it's not drawing this hole as deep as, it's drawing it a lot deeper than I am. But let's put 4 inches and see what happens. So the weight went way down, but our drawing didn't really change much. Okay, so that's one way of making a balsa nose cone or a balsa part in RockSim. The other way is, instead of drilling it out, let's say we're going to take that drill and start kind of like, as we're drilling, the drill is coming down, you take your balsa and you push it up into it, you're drilling it out, and now you're taking that balsa and going around in circles, and you're hogging out the edges. And so this, if you could make it uniform all the way around, then instead of making it solid, you'd make it hollow, and then you would say, what is the wall thickness of this hollow balsa nose cone? So let's call it 0.6 inches. And at this point, it doesn't show you that it's hollow on the back of the rocket, but it is, because when we say hollow, it's kind of like a blow mold. When they blow mold it, it's hollow on the inside, but the back end is capped off. And that's what we're seeing here, is this nose cone has been hollowed out, although I wonder what happened to, oh, that's 0.6 inches. It's like, why is that so heavy? Let's make it 0.06 inches, and then watch the weight go down when I hit the tab key. Yeah, so that's better. Say, why is my nose cone so heavy? All right, so that is how you would do it in RockSim. So there's two ways. You can either drill it out or give it a wall thickness. And so hopefully that answers the first question. Where's that at? Okay. Can you, is there any do's or don'ts for payload rockets? Not really. If you want to make your rocket lighter by hollowing out the balsa, go for it. The only thing you have to worry about is, like I was saying, is if you're taking that drill and then you drilled too deep, it's going to come out the tip. So don't drill it too deep. And do any of them require any special RockSim techniques? And I just showed you. There's just two things right there. And you could do this for transitions as well as nose cones. Just hollow them out. There's not a lot to see, but you can do it. If I make this even thicker, 1.3 2 inches in diameter. See, now it's like a really thin wall. And in fact, it gave me a negative mass. I've never even seen that. So that's kind of like too thick. I think I took out too much material. Yeah, still too much. 0.9. Yeah, even 0.9, 4-inch long. It's giving me a mass that's like very, very little bit. Okay, so that's save your changes. Let's say yes. Okay, so that was Carlos's question, and why does it keep bringing up that? I want this. Okay, so here is the next question that I got, and this was from Rick Ely. He says, I have created a model in RockSim, and the model he created was called the Hound Dog, but cannot seem to define the jet engine. I have contacted support previously about my inability to do this, but I really need more help. Do you know someone who could walk me through it? I know someone. I'll walk you through it. Okay. So this is Rick's model. As you can see, it's a tube with a nose cone and some fins at the front. It's got 2 big side fins and then a vertical tail. And then on the bottom, I don't know if you can see that. Let's see if I can make this bigger. It's a little bit blurry, but on the bottom, he's got a jet engine on there. So let's design this rocket real quick. And okay, so we already got a nose cone, and that's kind of why I started with that one, because I was trying to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Now we're going to add a body tube, and that was a BT55, so I'm looking for a BT55, which is a 33 millimeter right there. And there's our body tube, and it's in 3D, so let's go back to 2D. So there's our body tube. I don't know, let me bring up that image again. See if this body tube is long enough compared to my nose cone. I think my nose cone is too short. That will work for what we're doing. We're just doing a simple example. I'll give you a quick demonstration of how to design a rocket. So let's make this a little bit longer, just so it looks a little bit more proportional. And the color on this tube, let's call it white. And in 2D, let's make it green. And click OK. Okay, so here we got our nose cone and body tube. And now I'll start adding some fins. So I can't add fins to the nose cone from here, but I can if I click on the body tube. So I'm going to do, what do those fins look like? What do they look like? It's hard to tell from this angle, but it's definitely not a trapezoid. So our fins that we add are going to be custom fins. And it always looks in the database first. And so we're going to cancel out of that. And then here's our screen, and this is, they put the fins down here at the bottom, but I want the fins on the nose cone. But I can change that just by changing the location right here. I can actually slide them onto the nose cone if the location becomes a negative number. So let's make it a negative 3 inches. Nope, -3, not 0.3. Okay, so there's our fins on the nose cone. And let's go to the plan points and start shaping these. And as soon as I clicked on the plan points, you saw that it matched to the curvature of the tube. And I want to make this a little bit bigger here. Oops, I added a point where I didn't need a point. Oh, but I added another point. And if you screw something up, just hit the undo last button. These fins are too big and not the right shape. Oops, I want to grab the point. Okay, so now they're smaller. They're pink. Let's change that color so we can see them. Let's make them red. And in 3D, we'll also make them red just for fun. Okay, so there's that fin. It's probably still too big. Let's change it like that. I don't know if this fin is the right shape. You'd have to adjust it yourself. Okay, so right now we're showing 3 fins on the rocket, and I think we need just 2. So let's change that to a 2. And so now they're across from each other, and if you don't like the plan points, you can change those just by clicking and dragging the points. All right, let's call it good. Under the General tab, let's call it a 16th. So a 16th is 0.0625 inches. So now it's thinner. And if we look at it in 3D, it kind of looks like an arrow. That's good enough, you know, for what we want. And if I zoom in further, and move things around just a little bit. All right, so there's our fin on the rocket. And if I want to round the edge, I'll come up here, cross section, I'll say rounded. And you can see now I've rounded all the edges on my fin. This is a new feature in RockSim version 11. And I can make the announcement. We are going to release it on Tuesday. This time, I'm really sure. Last week I was partially sure. This time I'm really sure. Not 100%, but 99%. We just got like one little thing to fix, and they were fixing it today. So if I get it over the weekend, I can get it up on the website by Tuesday. And then it will be released Tuesday. We wanted it to release on the 11th. So RockSim 11 released on the 11th, but we didn't quite make it. Anyway, going back to the design, we need to speed things up here. We need to do another 2 fins on this rocket. So again, let's go to, and we're going to attach the fins to the body tube, and we're going to do custom fins again. Again, it looks in the database, tries to find something, and again, it throws our sample fins here on the back of the rocket. And let's go into 2D. So here's the fins. Let's change the location. Let me see those other fins here if I can find them. Okay, so these big fins, I can't see anything from that side, but it looks to be about halfway up the tube to about 3/4 of the way back is the root. And they're big. Okay, so let's change the plan points again. And that looks about the right starting point. Let's just make them bigger. I think we need to go a little bit bigger. Okay, and then you can click a point and add a point. Okay, so this is 3 fins. We need to change it to 2 fins. Let's change the location. Let's move it up a little bit more. All right, let's make it a little bit bigger. So I'm just going to grab these points and make them bigger. I don't like that. I think it still needs to be bigger. You can, keep adjusting the points until you get it to look like something that you want. I don't like this. Doesn't look quite right to me. This gives me a better view, but it's not a great view either. looks like it's flat on the bottom, and it goes out. Yeah. Anyway, we'll call it good for right now. And again, how thick is it? It's an 1/8 inch thick. And we'll round it again and say okay. And it's made out of balsa wood. Okay, so now he's got a vertical tail fin on here. So we're going to do one more fin. And this fin looks like a simple trapezoid. So we're going to attach a simple fin to this. And again, it looks in the database. So here's our fin. And we only want one of them. And I think that might be a little bit too big. So let's move the semi-span down a little bit. 2 inches. Okay, I like that better. But on this rocket, it's in the wrong orientation. It needs to be in the middle of the tube here. So to change that, let's go to a base view. You can see my red one is the fin. And if I go to the radial position tab, and if I just move the slider bar here, and I want it at exactly minus 90 degrees. All right, so there's my tail. And I click OK. Okay, so now it's in the right spot. And if we look at it in 3D, it doesn't look like the other hound dog, but it's not bad. You get the idea. You'll play around with it to get it the shape you want. All right, so let's put a motor mount in this. So again, we're going to select the body tube, and we're going to use an inside tube. And let's make this an 18 millimeter. Yeah. And it's 2.75 inches long, and this is a motor mount. And the color, let's make the color yellow. And in 2D, let's make it that color. Okay, so there it is. And we're looking at the back end of the rocket. Let's look at the side view. And put it up here at the nose, so we need to move it back to the back end. So let's go into the General tab. And let's say from the base of the owning part, let's make it 0 inches. So now our tube is right here at the base of the part, and that's good. And let's call that good. And we're kind of picking up speed here. Now we need some centering rings. So let's, again, we're going to attach them to that tube. I'm going to grab that centering ring. And this is an 1833. And it put it right here at the front. Let me make this bigger for you. So it's right here, it's blue, and I'm going to move the location. I'm just grabbing the slider bar and I'm looking at the picture on the bottom, and it's moving to the back. And it's right there in that center, in that motor mount tube. And let's change the color. Instead of that, let's make it orange. Aren't you glad that I didn't make it black? There it is. And we're going to call that one the front centering ring. And my keycap's on. Click OK. Okay, so we got one centering ring. Now we need another one. So this time I'm going to just duplicate it. So I'm going to do a copy. Come back up here, select the tube, and right-click and say paste. And it pasted that same ring in the same spot. So now we just need to move it back. So I'm going to open that up. And all I need to do is to change the location. We'll call it like right there. And we'll call it the rear centering ring. And click OK. So now we got an engine mount in here. The thing that I don't like about this rocket is, other than the shape, I'm not happy with the shape, is that my center of gravity is just ever so slightly behind the center of pressure. and that's making things unstable. Let's put a rocket motor in there, and the biggest motor we'll probably use on this is a C6. And I'm looking for the heaviest motor, and C6s are pretty heavy. And it really doesn't matter the delay, we'll call it a 5. And okay, so because this is prepare for launch, so we'll click OK. And so now the center of gravity is way behind the center of pressure, and this thing is unstable. So we need to make these big fins bigger to move that center of pressure back. And so those were these. I need to change this to the main wing. And let's go to the plan point. So now we're looking at this center of pressure, center of gravity. We want to make these much bigger. So I'm going to take that point. Okay, so it moved it back a little bit. I'm just still playing with that shape, trying to make it better. All right, so it didn't make it better. But my center pressure is still too far forward, so the other thing I want to do is to slide these wings to the back, and that will make it better. Okay, so now we got a stable rocket. It's marginally stable, but it's better than it was, although what we'd probably have to do is, I don't like the look of it, let's call it like right there. And so we're still unstable, so we're going to need to add some nose weight. All right, so I'm going to go to the nose cone up here, and I'm going to add a mass object. And the mass object is just going to be a lump of clay, and I don't know how much to put in yet. So let's call it clay nose mass. And right now it's putting it at the very tip of the rocket. And what's important to me is moving that center of gravity forward. So now we're going to try to move the center of gravity forward by adding weight to the front. But I can't put it at the very, very tip because there's no place on the rocket for that. So let's put it like right there in the rocket. And I want to change this by moving the mass. So watch this symbol move forward as I add mass. So let's add 10 grams. And it did, it moved it forward. So if I put 10 grams of weight, which is not much, it's enough to make this rocket marginally stable. And I'll probably double that just to be sure. Now I got a lot more margin. And I might need more when we start adding that jet engine. That was the whole purpose of this, is to add that jet engine. Okay, so here's our rocket. Let's look at it in 3D. That blue dot is the nose mass. All right, so there's our rocket so far. And now we need to add a jet engine down at the bottom. So how do you do that? Okay, so this is how to add the jet engine. What we're going to use is a special component in RockSim called a pod. A pod allows us to put parts on the outside of the rocket. The only parts on the outside of the rocket right now are just the fins. Another part that doesn't require a pod is a launch lug. You can put a launch lug on the outside, but anything else, it's going to need to be a pod. Okay, so I'm going to select my body tube right here, and then I'm going to come over here to the pod, and I say we're going to add a pod to this tube. And right now I put that pod right there, and I don't want this pod falling off the rocket, so I'm going to uncheck that. And I'm not sure about the position or the radial position, so basically this pod what it looks like is, okay, we have the nose cone, and then it basically looks like another rocket that's attached to the side, although it's kind of truncated at the front and the back. So let's do that. So first I'm going to try to move it back to about that location. So I'm just going to take the slider and just slide it back. So that's where the pod is going to be attached to the tube, is that symbol right there. We'll click OK. Okay, so on the rocket right now, it doesn't look like anything. So what a pod is a collection of parts, and this allows us to attach it. And so now I can attach other parts to this pod. And here are the parts that I can attach. And I'm going to start with a transition, because on this rocket, it looks like it's a transition as the front of the jet engine. Although, one of the other things is there's this little rectangle here, and I think that's a pylon that the pod is actually attached. So what we're going to do is we're going to attach, I should have created this pylon as a fin, just a little short rectangular fin, and then attaching the jet engine to that. So let me back out of this just a little bit. So I'm going to delete that pod because I think I added it too early. So first I want to delete this, and then I want to add another fin down here at the bottom where I'm going to attach that jet engine. So and I'm going to find the body tube, and we're going to do a fin, and this one is just going to be a rectangular fin. Selecting from the database, and let's say, no, don't display that screen. Okay, so where's that fin? Oh, the fins are right here right now. We're going to change it to a single fin. And the location, first let's make the semi-span. Let's make it like 0.125 inches. And I want the root cord to be maybe 6 inches long. And the tip cord also to be 6 inches long. And I don't want there to be any sweep angle, so I'm going to change this from 20 to 0. And there is my short stubby fin, and it's just in the wrong spot, so I'm going to move it. Let's call it like right there. But it's in the wrong spot. Again, on the fins, it needs to be on the side. So let's look at this view, and I need to rotate it down here to this side, because right now it's right there. And I can do that with the radial position and just slide it around, and you can see it wants to be at 90 degrees, so let's call it 90 degrees. And there is my pylon. Then I'm going to attach the pod. Now I can attach a pod to this. So there it is, that attachment point. And I can only, if I select the fin, the only component I can attach is a pod, which is perfect, because that's all I want. And let's look at a side view. There it is. And that's where I want it attached. So now this time, we're going to start attaching, we're going to attach other parts to this. And we're going to start with the transition. And it's looking in the database. I don't want to do that. And I'll make this screen bigger so we can see it. And I don't know what the diameter is. It's maybe it looks to be about the same diameter as the main tube. So let's call that. So that the rear diameter is going to be the same diameter as that tube. The front diameter has to be smaller. So the rear diameter was 1.326. This is, I'm doing this from memory. And the front diameter, let's call it 1 inch. And let's call it the length of that 0.75 inches. So there is my front of my inlet. And I think my front diameter is not quite big enough because it. All right, so there is the inlet. And let's see that in 3D, see if it's in the right spot. Yes, it is. Okay, so the material of this, let's call this one balsa wood. Maybe we're going to get a balsa wood part. Yeah, maybe we want to make it hollow. Let's put a core diameter in of 1 inch. Look at that, it made it hollow. I like that. And the only thing that's wrong with it is the color. So let's choose the color, let's change it to white. And then the 2D, let's change it to that dark green. Okay. See, how does that look over here? It should be that this transition is hanging off of the pod. So let's see if we can change the location. And I can't. We might come back and try to fix that later. Okay, so let's call it okay. Okay, so now we're going to attach to this a body tube. And that body tube that we used on the bigger one was a BT55, which is 33 millimeter. And I'll click and say okay. You can see it added a tube there, but now our tube is much too long. You guys are talking about a lot of things here. We'll get to the chat here in a minute because we're already like too long and I need to get this on here. So I'm going to change the length of my tube to that. Maybe it's, yeah, it needs to be about maybe a little bit longer actually. All right, so there's the other tube, and now we need to add one more transition to the back of that, and then I think we'll try to call it. We'll try to adjust it. Let's see if we can adjust it. It's looking in the database. Don't care. The front diameter is 1.325 or 326. The rear diameter, let's call it. Let's see, does it? Again, it looks like the other one. Let's call it 1.1 inches. And the length, we'll call it 1 inch long. And why is it not showing up? Oh, I put it right there. Let's call it core diameter 1 inch. I think this was supposed to be bigger, like 1.2. And the color, that's okay. Let's change this front color to purple. And let's call this the rear transition. And let's look at it in 3D. Oh, it's there. It's there, it's just I didn't see it. Look at that, and it's even hollow. All right, so we've got our jet engine, and on this pod, it looks like there's another strake on the bottom of it, and that's pretty easy to add. That's just another fin. Oh, I just crashed RockSim. Ah! All the work that I just did, I just lost it. It says, call your lawyer. No. Well, I should have been saving along the way. That's my fault. Let's go to the questions. Alan White says, any updates on getting Bing Maps to work with RockSim Pro? The answer, Alan, is no, there's no updates yet. We've determined that we can't use Bing Maps, but we're trying to use something else. There's one that we know works, that is the map tiler. If you go to rocksim.com, you'll see what the map tiler maps look like. They're not as good as the Bing maps, but they're not terrible. So the RockSim launch visualizer is at rocksim.com, and when you load it up, it's still loading. I need to log in. So you gotta enter your name. Okay, so now I'm logged in, and if you go to the launch site, it should load these maps. So this is Pueblo, Colorado, where our local club launches. And so you can see the maps here, but the maps are a little bit older. At our particular launch site, we've got, if you looked at it in Bing Maps, you'd see other buildings here. So they're a little bit older, and the quality is not quite as good, but it's good enough. I can still see where the trees are and where some of the obstacles are. I just can't see, what I really want to see. And you can see that there's still terrain here. The terrain is just fine. Like over here, we've got a gully. You can see that, the rocket could go down into that gully. It's still loading the maps. So our basic option is we can use the map tiler, but we're trying to find out if there's other services. You can see down here it says map tiler. If there's other services that have better resolution. It's just for some reason the Bing map ones aren't working anymore. Falcon 9 says, why is this over OpenRocket? Well, you couldn't do this in OpenRocket. Let's see, where's he? What else we got here? There's so many comments. You guys are going crazy today. Does RockSim have an optimized function that will adjust component dimensions to maximize and minimize a goal, such as maximum altitude? The answer is no. And I don't think that feature it sounds useful until you get into practical terms. What's if you want to optimize a fin, how do you optimize a fin? And this is the practical way. In real life, you'll know that the best shape is a ellipse. And so if you want to optimize a fin, it's going to be an ellipse. And then, how do you optimize that for altitude? Well, make it light as possible. How do you do that? You make it as thin as possible. You don't need to have a feature that will allow you to do that. All you need to know is what is the best shape fin. And it's an ellipse. And why would you... We could do that in RockSim. The recommend rocket motor button. It will run hundreds and thousands of simulations, and just like that. And that's practical. Lots of open rocket questions here. Rosa says, I'm using RockSim for years now, but I'm still amazed how versatile it is. I will be ordering RockSim 11 next week. And the good news is it will be a paid upgrade, but it won't be much. I think it'll be attractive to a lot of people. Okay, so the last time I crashed RockSim, but you got the gist of how to add a jet engine. I'm just sorry that I crashed it. And I don't know why. I'll have to go look at the replay and see what button I clicked. Okay, so we're like 10 minutes long today. Thank you for sticking around. It was a lot of fun. Like I said, next week, Tuesday, we'll be releasing RockSim 11. Next week, Friday, is our normal RockSim Live time, but next week, Friday, is Good Friday. We got Easter Sunday coming up. So we're going to pause for next Friday. Apogee will actually be open. So if you want to place an order, we'll still ship it out, but I'm not going to do RockSim Live. I just want to take a little break. But then we'll be back the following week after that. Let me bring up a calendar here just to double check the date. That will be April 4. That we'll do RockSim Live again. So save up your questions. Play around with the new version 11. I kind of hinted at what the new features were a few weeks ago. But we will start releasing videos showing what the features are and how cool they are. There's more features that RockSim will do that other programs don't. It's just, we're having a lot of fun, designing in these cool features, practical, useful features that you're going to use. So be tuned in for that on Tuesday. And so until then, I'm going to end this and I'll give you a countdown. So in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go out and launch something.